You see, I'm in chains. I'm in chains because I'm about to be executed. Executed because I am a follower of Jesus. Don't worry, I know some of you might wish I could stay, but you don't have to fear. Because I am going to do what I should have done over 30 years ago. I'm finally going to die for what I believe. You see, we, the creators of this church, the ones who first spread it, we were not always so faithful. We should have believed what Jesus had taught us. We should have been willing to obey. But we didn't. We didn't realize that Jesus was the truth. So we didn't listen to him. Now I can. You see, Jesus taught us who he was. I remember when Jesus moved from Nazareth to Capernaum, it was something special because he began to call people to follow him. He called me and my brother Andrew and two of our business partners, James and John. And because he called, we followed. But some of the stuff that he taught began to make some waves. I remember his mother and his brothers and sisters, they all came to try to take Jesus home, to get him to stop what he was doing. And so they approached us and they said, "Could you bring Jesus outside so that we can talk to him?" Well, we went in and said, "Jesus, your mother and brothers and sisters are outside. Do you want to go talk to them?" And I'll never forget what he said. He said, "The ones who obey me are my mother and my brothers and sisters." And then he stayed. He taught us. It felt special, like we were part of something amazing. And we were. If he only taught us, then maybe some of what I had done would be excusable. But he did more than that. He showed us who he was. Later on in his ministry, just before he died, he took James, John, and myself up to a mountaintop. We had no idea what was going to happen. But as we reached the summit, his inner circle, when we reached that summit, suddenly Jesus' clothes became white, like light. And then he was immediately, on either side of him was Moses and Elijah, and they were just talking to him like this was normal. I began to feel a little afraid, worried, excited. I had no idea what to do. All I could remember was I felt like this was holy ground and I am a sinner. And so I said to Jesus, "Jesus, should we build like tabernacles? One for you and Moses and Elijah?" But after I said that, instantly the whole area was surrounded by this cloud and this voice just happened. And the voice said, "This is my son. Obey him." James, John, and myself, we just hit the floor. We were worried about what we were experiencing. We were excited about who Jesus was. We didn't know how to feel. And then I said, well, I don't really know what I said. I was trying to say, is it good for us to be here? But John swears it came out something like, "Is it good us here to be?" I mean, what would you feel if you saw that happen? That's why I should have believed. I saw it. I should have obeyed him. I didn't. We went down the mountain. Nobody even said a word for at least an hour. James finally got up enough courage to say something. But before he even got out a word, Jesus turned to us and said, "Don't say anything, not a word, until the Son of Man rises from the dead." What is he talking about? We saw that kind of power, that kind of authority. Moses and Elijah talking to him. How is he going to die? What does he mean, rise from the dead? This made no sense. It just seemed impossible because we didn't understand. And because we didn't understand, we didn't believe. And because we didn't believe, we didn't obey. But that power that he had, that authority that Jesus possessed, that's what got him into trouble. See, it was the Pharisees and the Sadducees who hated the things that Jesus taught. He hated the fact that he was gathering a crowd even larger than theirs, and that they were losing authority. And so they were constantly trying to come to Jesus and to confuse him or to trick him. And this one time they came and they started complaining to Jesus about how we, the disciples, didn't wash our hands before we ate. See, part of Jewish tradition is that you wash your hands before you eat. That way you keep the food clean. And we didn't follow that tradition. And so they said to Jesus, why do your disciples not follow tradition? And Jesus pegged them well. He knew exactly how to cut right to the heart of the matter. And he told them, he looked them straight in the eye and he said, Isaiah describes you rightly. You follow me with your lips and your heart is far from me. Then he went on. He went on to describe how these Pharisees were refusing to follow the laws of God, all in order to uphold their tradition. Then he got right to the heart of the matter and he said, you, for example, you don't honor your father and mother. You give money to the temple and say that's good enough. They were not following the laws of God. And Jesus knew it. And they knew it. And that's why they hated him. And that's why they sought to kill him. They conspired with even one of our own, a man by the name of Judas, to arrest Jesus in the middle of the night. So he told them exactly what he would do. Judas gathered a group of men with clubs and torches. The night after the Passover feast, we went to the Garden of Gethsemane, and Judas met us there with this crowd. And he told them, the man that I kiss, that is Jesus. Arrest him. And he walked right up to Jesus and said, Rabbi. He kissed him. And then they reached to grab Jesus. But Jesus said something that I'll never forget. He said, in order to tell them this is wrong, what they were doing was sin. He said, I've been teaching every day in the temple. Why did you not go and arrest me then? You see, our laws say that we're supposed to have an arrest during the day. That way everybody could know that a trial is supposed to happen and that people could come to testify. But this arrest was at night. And they took Jesus away to the house of Caiaphas, a high priest, in order to try to put him on trial. What they did was a mockery. Many of the disciples ran and scattered. Even one, some of the soldiers tried to catch, and he left naked. I fled, but I circled back around and followed them to the house, so I knew what was going to happen, and I could see what was going on. Here at this house, it was a sham of a trial, a mockery of justice. They brought Jesus in. When Jesus stood there, they're supposed to have, according to the Torah, our law, they're supposed to have two witnesses that agree to exactly what the crime is and exactly what happened. Well, they brought in these false witnesses who lied. They said things like, oh, Jesus said that he could raise or destroy the temple and in 3 days raise it with his bare hands. He never said such a thing. But these false testifiers, they couldn't even agree. And so Jesus should have been let go, because the law says you don't have to testify against yourself. Witnesses have to be brought in against you. But the high priest stood up and said, what do you say about these accusations? Are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of the Most High God? I wished that Jesus could have stayed silent, maybe even just lie once. But what he said doomed him. See, that's why we know he chose it. Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man descending at the right hand of the Father, the Most High God. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees all began to yell and scream. They were in this murderous uproar. They tore their clothes, and the high priest himself said, what more evidence do we need? What do you say? And they all shouted to have him killed, to take him away and to execute him. Now, they could have, if it was following Jewish law, killed him on the spot, but they didn't. They didn't want to be blamed. So they took him before Pilate in order to have Pilate be the judge and execute him. Oh, Pilate. He had a better trial than even the Pharisees and Sadducees, Jesus' own people. Pilate asked him, was he the king of the Jews? Jesus said, "'Tis as you say." Pilate then knew he had nothing to hide. There was no reason for him to lie. He wasn't trying to have this insurrection against Rome. Otherwise, his people would probably be fighting for him. So Pilate tried to let Jesus go free. He tried to at least be a little just. And so he had an idea. He used a little finesse on the crowd. See, at that time of year, at the time of the Passover, Pilate would be magnanimous and let one prisoner go free. And if they claimed that Jesus was this king of the Jews, this insurrectionist, he thought, I'll bring in a real insurrectionist. Surely they'll let Jesus go, who's done nothing wrong. So they brought in a man by the name of Barabbas, a murderer, a zealot. And Pilate asked, who do you want me to set free? Who should I let go? But the people, those Pharisees, those Sadducees, had no shame. They all shouted, Barabbas! Barabbas! We want Barabbas! And Pilate became pale. His plan wasn't working. And so he looked at the crowd and he tried to reason with them. Well, what do you want me to do with Jesus, he said. And what they claimed chilled me and him to the bones. They yelled, crucify him! Kill him! Crucify him! Kill him! All of Jerusalem could hear it. Why wasn't I there? Why didn't I shout? I didn't because I failed. See, back at the trial with the Pharisees and Sadducees, I watched what was happening. I hung my head in shame because I knew what they were going to do. I knew that they were going to try to lynch Jesus. And then this woman looked at me and she said, aren't you out of him? And before I even had a chance to think, I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I quickly went into the courtyard and I tried to warm myself over by the fire, just get away from the questions and the people and then think, what was I going to do? And then another girl quickly heard what I was saying, and she said, yes, you're one of those men from Galilee. You're of the disciples of Jesus. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand. And then soon I couldn't stop it. People began to point and look at me and say, you are one of Jesus' disciples. You're with him. And as they pointed at me, as they looked at me, I knew that they were going crazy, that they were wanting to tie me to Jesus and that I might die too. And suddenly my life became so very important. How do you silence them? How do you get it to stop? How do you save your life? So I shouted, I screamed at the top of my lungs. I shouted, I don't know that. And I cursed him. I swore against his name. And I walked away. So I wasn't there. I should have been there. So Pilate just turned them over to the Roman soldiers to satisfy their bloodlust. The Roman soldiers beat him within an inch of his life, put on purple robes. They covered his eyes. He said, which person hit you, Jesus? Prophesy. They bowed down to him and mocked him. They beat him so badly that he couldn't even carry his cross. They had to grab a man by the name of Simon of Cyrene out for the audience. And they dragged him through the streets to a hill called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And there they put nails in his hands and in his feet in order to watch him die. But you have to understand, Jesus chose this. You see, Jesus could have shown his power, but he didn't. We were all hoping that he would. Even some of the passers-by mocked him in order to try to encourage him to show his power. They said things like, if you can destroy the temple, save yourself. Even the high priest got in on some of the mocking. And he said, you saved others. Take yourself down from the cross. Then we will see and believe. But seeing isn't believing. You have to believe in order to see. And I should have believed. That's why I should have obeyed him as the truth. He is the way that all of us can be saved, but I didn't. Jesus chose this death. And as he died on the cross at the 6th hour, the world around him became as black as night. Something I've never experienced before or since. When Jesus felt that darkness, he cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. They all thought that he was crying out to Elijah. And they said, well, let's see if Elijah comes. That's not what he was doing. He was quoting a Psalm of David. He was letting us know that he was being separated from God for my sin, for my betrayal. And God cannot be in the presence of sin. So Jesus died alone. At the end, he finally breathed his last. And he died in about 3 hours. A man by the name of Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the Sanhedrin who actually voted against the trial. He wanted to do something kind for Jesus. And so he asked Pilate for the body. And Pilate couldn't believe how in the world did he die so quickly. So he called a centurion, and the centurion provided Pilate with proof that Jesus indeed was dead. So Pilate said, all right, if you want the body, take it. And so Joseph took Jesus down from the cross and carefully wrapped his body in linen and laid him in this freshly cut tomb. And there Jesus stayed the rest of Friday, all day on the Sabbath. But on Sunday, something happened. I wish I could say that it was that we all believed and rejoiced, but women who had watched what Joseph of Arimathea did, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Jesus, Salome, and others, they wanted to cry with Jesus. They wanted to cry over his body, and they gathered spices and were ready to prepare more spices for Jesus's mourning, for everyone to be able to see him in that tomb. And so as they went, they were talking to each other about, who is going to roll away the stone? How were they going to be able to get inside? And as they were wondering, they got to the tomb, but the stone was already rolled away. Well, that was odd. You don't usually do that, for wild animals might disturb the body. They came closer and looked in, only to find this man in white seated where Jesus' body was supposed to be. And the man spoke to them. He said, you look for Jesus of Nazareth. He is not here. He is risen just as he said he would. Go, tell his disciples and Peter that he goes before you into Galilee. He will meet you there. He said, tell Peter. It boggles my mind that after all I did, Jesus still wanted me to know. God told the angel to tell Peter so that I could know about the resurrection. I wish I could say that the women left and came and told us and we rejoiced and out of joy and faith and followed Jesus for the rest of our lives, but I can't say that. It didn't happen. I wish at least they came and ran and told me and that I would have believed. I would have his inner circle, but that didn't happen either. See, they left in silence and didn't tell anyone. It wasn't until we finally approached them about the tomb that they said anything about it being empty. And I wish I could say that at least then I believed, but John watched him die. He told us about what happened. There's no way Jesus could be alive after that, could he? And it wasn't until I finally saw him face to face that I really did believe. But it wasn't for another 50 days after his resurrection that I told anyone about him. See, it was all too impossible. So even though I saw miracles, I didn't believe. And so I didn't obey. But after the Holy Spirit came, now I do believe. I believe he is the truth. And so I will obey him. I will follow him, even if it means I go to my death. What about you? Do you believe? Believe that Jesus died for your sin, that he took your punishment and rose again to bring you life. You today could admit that sin, believe in Jesus' death and resurrection, and confess that to God. Or do you want to obey him? Follow him like I do now, that because he is the truth, maybe obey him in baptism, or obey him in sharing what Jesus did with other people. Because to obey, to believe, to follow, that truth, that That is life. So even though I go to my death, do not feel bad, because I go to life, to real life.